The story is that, let me start by asking people, how many of you have ever seen a 19th century antique writing chest? Well, what it was something that, that was something that people took on journeys, when they went in horse-drawn carriages and all this stuff. And they took it to write letters. And it was a small trunk, about 2.5 feet wide, about 10 inches high. It opened up to a slant, just like a desk that slants, with a kind of a felt pad. Underneath there was a place for paper. There were all these little kinds of drawers for pens and things. And I was going to channel this chest as something that had influenced me, because it was something that my mother persuaded me to buy in England and then took over for herself. And it became a kind of strange post box, as you'll see. But last night, when I went to the sort of open but enclosed space where we store things, it was gone. And there is a tremendous, there's shock and all that. There's also this weird kind of freedom of being liberated, because I think influence gives us anxiety as well. Harold Bloom wrote this, famous essay called The Anxiety of Influence. It's all about how Shakespeare is great and we all want to be like him and we worry. And he kind of, I think he thinks that's good, but I'm not sure it is. And there was this terrible sense of loss because there are objects in there I can't replace. And at the same time, there was a sense of a weird kind of liberation. So it's kind of, I was going to channel this thing and have you take keepsakes from it, but instead I'll just have to lay out on the stage what I quickly got with apologies that they're not really very interesting and somewhat conventional, but they are antiques. And later you can come up and get them. I invite you to interact. So let's pretend this is a chest. Okay. So you got to pretend that's a chest, and it's both terrible and wonderful that it was stolen, because it really has allowed me to reflect about what influence is, and how the paradox of influence, I think, is that as much as we love it, we also want to be freed from it. And I think some of the work that many of us do as artists, as writers, as even computer programmers, we're working against that anxiety of influence. We're influenced by it, but we also want to be free of it. So it starts, usually I don't write, by the way, in this particular vein. Like you, I've been very drawn to the surrealist writers. A lot of people think my work is surrealism. But I did write a couple of creative autobiographies that appear in Enchantment. And I wrote one about my mother. And let me tell you a little bit about her first. You say the word mother and everyone goes, but not all mothers are good. Some mothers are sad, some mothers are very violent. And those of us who grew up with them, struggle with somewhat new agey concepts of forgiveness, because it's hard to forgive when you've seen real damage, especially to a sibling. And both of my parents were like that. I'm a survivor. So she was very difficult and very depressed and very hard. And when I wrote these creative autobiographies, and they are twisted and torqued so you get the idea, because an anecdote is never a story. It's just a just so. So a good creative autobiography has some lies in it, but there's some basic truths. And when I wrote them, they were really about her. And the second one is about how she died. And she died in a kind of unhappy, ghoulish way. She got mildly sick, and my father, hey, I'll tell it all, because it's an anecdote right now. It's not a story. It's just this stranger telling you something outrageous. My father was having an affair with a much younger graduate student. And he ushered, and she got sick, stopped eating, and he kind of ushered her in this ghoulish way through things like shock treatments and all these things, and then she died. So it was like the family unbound. I just saw it all. But in the middle of it, I visited her at the hospital, and the book is partly about family heirlooms. It's one of the things that was a key thing was also stolen. It was a very, very ancient map of Persia. So here we go about the antique writing chest. And the antique writing chest came from England and was a sort of chest gentlemen of means took on journeys in the 19th century. It had drawers, boxes for pen, ink, paper, and sealing wax, and a tiled surface that one could write on. I bought the chest in England when I was 17, and my parents and I took a winding road to the Bronte's house. There we saw the impossibly small buttons on Charlotte's wedding dress, incomprehensible books the children had written in code, and the graveyard beyond their house. The antique store was at the bottom of the hill, and my mother, who noticed the writing chest, said I should buy it. It's not my sort of thing, Mom. Buy it, said my mother, who had forsaken maps for antiques. You'll never regret it. It's marvelous, she taught. I didn't want the chest. I wanted to be in a seedy French hotel with shadows like Matisse paintings. I wanted to wake up with my boyfriend in a tangle of sheets and the smell of sour wine. Even so, I bought the chest to please her, and she found someone in Vermont to refinish it. Soon the mahogany shone, and the brass handles were so bright they'd have attracted highway robbers. It stayed in my room in Vermont as an oddity, and eventually my mother moved herself into my bedroom, which she called her writing room. The chest is there, she always said. Are you sure you don't want it? No, Mother, I said. The chest should be with you. So then she dies. And after a long time, with much sort of back and forth, my father gives me the writing chest. I haven't looked at it in years. It wasn't really mine anymore, it was hers. And it's kind of important maybe to say that my mother wanted to be a writer. That was very important to her. She was very enamored of the romance of writing instead of the isolation of it, the observation of it, the hard work of it, the craft of it. And it was kind of on her mind all the time. So I seem to have lost my place, but just give me a minute. So then she dies and I get the chest. And this is what I, of course, hoped you would see. But let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Okay, yes. So I call this one the post box. Before I leave home, and this is, fudging the truth, this is exactly how it happened. Before I leave home, my father gives me the antique writing chest, a burden to take home on the plane. When I get home, I open it, thinking I'll find nothing. Instead, I find all my mother's writing, letters she had started, often to me, and never finished. Notes that toy with suicide. 5 or 6 journal entries so close to my sense of her, I'm not sure if they're hers or mine. Here's one, and I think I published it out of a kind of homage to her because she so wanted to be published. The dreamer sleeps, and nothing can stop her, she wrote, because sleep is a consuming possession, a lust that no one can observe. At the same time, sleep, The domain of the sleeper is not comforting. It is cold, solid, burdensome. The eyelid repairs the night. It is morning, and the typical day is announced. Only the seasons change. There are other things in the chest. Birthday candle holders shaped like birds. Letters from me. A picture of my mother when she was 13. An improbable braided candle, the kind that is used to light candles on the Sabbath that my mother never used. There is also a single sentence written on yellow paper that's fairly recent, as if she knows about her death. When Eurydice knew she was to be chosen, she suddenly became afraid, even though it was really a very elaborate sojourn that was being prepared for her. There was nothing to go by, not even a map. I look at everything, the plastic candle holders in the shape of birds, a wooden rattle I played with when I was 3. And it occurs to me that my mother knew I would find everything in there. Who would know when we found that chest in England that it would become a haphazard postal system between a mother and a daughter? The chest smells like my mother. It smells of Pond's cold cream, unguents of the 50s and 60s. I put the chest in my living room, and it stays there like a heartbeat. Thank you, and please come up and take something now. This is performance, this is influence.
Thank you.